I'm having some intense deja vu right about now. This must be because I've already reviewed Rayman in a previous episode. Though I think it's fair to say my previous review of Rayman was more of a nostalgia trip than a review. For anyone interested, I'll slap a link in the description of episode 16. Rayman was a video game published and developed by French gaming studio Ubisoft, Montpellier, and the Rayman character was created by Michel Ancel. I don't think I said that right, but moving on. The initial project would have seen Rayman as a Super NES title involving a two-player co-op. However, this concept was scrapped early on in favor of a single-player concept on the Atari Jaguar and the Sony PlayStation in September 1995, and later to the likes of the Sega Saturn and MS-DOS. Rayman is the only platformer from the original PlayStation launch lineup, and was also the only launch title to not be in 3D. This is because 3D platformers weren't a thing that existed yet. Jumping Flash, the first 3D platformer on the PlayStation, was in development at this time, but wouldn't be released until later that same year. The PlayStation version is also far superior to the Jaguar version, which is really a tip of the hat to Sony's CD technology. Better music, graphics, sound, and space optimization. The in-game story is the definition of basic. There is peace and harmony all throughout the world that is maintained by the Great Protoon and the Electoons. Until Mr. Dark, fantastic job on that name by the way guys, steals the Great Protoon and imprisons the Electoons. The world calls upon Rayman to save the day. What is Rayman? Who is Rayman? Beats me. He's basically a limbless human eggplant hybrid according to Google. The controls in Rayman are tight and responsive, no delays whatsoever. In the beginning, all Rayman can do is move with left or right, jump with X, climb with up and down, make this weird face by pressing circle, and he can also crawl with L1 and R1. Rayman eventually gets additional powers as we traverse the game and run into Batilla the Fairy. After the first two stages, Batilla gives us the ability to punch by pressing square. Holding square will charge your punch and extend it to a longer distance. There are also glove power-ups scattered throughout the game, which will add a little punch to that punch. I'll get my code. The next time we see Batilla the Fairy, a few levels later on down the road, Rayman learns how to hang off of platforms to reach higher ledges. This is something that comes automatically when jumping up to a ledge that's a little out of reach. The next time we see her, she gives us the ability to shoot our fist at these floating O-rings. This allows us to swing over areas. And by the way, that's just kind of how Rayman's attack works. You don't just punch, you shoot your fist across the screen. And it works more like a boomerang than an actual fist, which is perfect for when you need to punch the backside of an enemy who's facing you. Or if you need to hit one of these little walking blueberry guys, because the fist follows you back, like a magnet. So if you're standing and you shoot your fist and then you immediately crouch down, the fist follows you downward. In our fourth meeting with Batilla the Fairy, she gives us the ability to use our hair as a helicopter, which allows us better precision on our landing whenever we're jumping through the air. We can also cover greater distances this way. In our final meeting with Batilla the Fairy, she gives us the ability to press and or hold circle to run. You can tap it and it turns on running until something kills your momentum, so you don't necessarily have to hold it down. With new powers come new challenges, though, as the later stages require these new abilities to traverse. The rules of the game are simple. Rayman must traverse 70 levels within 6 worlds and save all of the Electoons. He must do this with a limited amount of lives and continues. Scattered across the world, there are these little blue tings and these Rayman trophies which act as extra lives. You must collect at least 100 tings in order to acquire an extra life. However, whenever you die, your ting counter resets. There are of course cheat codes to which you can up your life counter to 99. Unless you memorize every level in the game, you're probably going to want to cheat. Rayman, like many early PlayStation games, has a password feature as well as a save feature. There are 102 Electoon cages Rayman needs to punch open to progress to the final world and fight Mr. Dark. There are several enemies that will try and prevent us from completing our mission, but to name some notable characters, we have Anti-Toons, which are evil versions of Electoons, but may as well be angry blueberries. They're essentially angry blueberries. Hunters, who we can only hit when they aren't shooting bullets with swinging hammers coming out of them. Stonemen, Livingstons, pirates, and clowns, among others. Even musical notes can hurt you in this game. There are a lion's share of stages throughout Rayman, and they take place in the Dream Forest, Bandland, the Blue Mountains, Picture City, and the Caves of Scops. And, last but not least, once you break open 102 Electoon cages, you have the sixth world, which is the Candy Chateau. Now is a good time to bring up the soundtrack. It is amazing. Some of the best on the PlayStation so far. I especially recommend the tracks from Bandland and Picture City. Now, naturally, I can't talk about Rayman without talking about how hard this game is. The Dream Forest stages are not difficult at all, but once we get halfway through Bandland, things start getting far more challenging. Platforms become more narrow, the ground we walk on sometimes feels like ice, there are spikes everywhere, and not only is the platforming more difficult, but the enemies and foreground obstacles up the challenge as well. The bosses range from fairly easy to surprisingly difficult. Frustratingly difficult, I guess I should say. Space Mama has been known to make gamers rage quit. All of Rayman's bosses also have pretty large health meters, so trying not to f*** up and having to start over weighs heavily on the mind. Also, I ate at Joe's, and I'll be giving them a piece of my mind on Yelp. Rayman is my favorite launch title so far on the Sony PlayStation. Great controls, colorful graphics, awesome soundtrack, mixed with fun yet challenging gameplay. PlayStation's first platformer gets an A-. Y'all have a great one.